Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever shared a dream, an accomplishment, or even just an idea, and instead of applause, you got shade? That's because jealous people don't always throw punches. They throw words. And those words, they carry weight. They're designed to make you doubt yourself. But today, we're going to expose those words for what they really are: projections of insecurity. Jealous people always say these words not because they're right, but because your growth threatens their comfort zone. They'll say, jealousy doesn't always show up with a loud bang or in obvious ways. More often, it sneaks in quietly, masked in what seems like casual conversation, sarcasm, or harmless jokes. This is because jealous people usually aren't bold enough to confront their own envy. So instead of expressing it outright, they lace their words with subtle hostility. It's what we call passive-aggressive language. Statements that on the surface might sound innocent, but underneath carry bitterness, resentment, or doubt. Instead of saying, "I'm jealous of your success," they say, "Oh, look at you now. Too good for us." That's not just a joke. That's their insecurity in a costume. Or they'll say, "Oh, wow, must be nice to have all that free time," when they know you've worked hard to create a life with more flexibility. It's their way of dismissing your dedication while making themselves feel better for not doing the same. Passive-aggressive jealousy shows up in backhanded compliments like you're lucky people like you, as if your relationships or achievements are built on chance instead of character and effort. It's in the "don't forget where you came from" reminders that feel less like love and more like a warning to stay small. It's the subtle digs, the fake concern, the phrases that sound supportive but sting a little, because they're meant to. Why do they do this? Because direct confrontation would require vulnerability, and jealous people rarely want to admit their feelings. It's easier to throw a sideways comment than to say, "I wish I had what you have." It's safer to act unimpressed than to admit they're intimidated by your growth. Passive aggressiveness gives them a way to express envy without seeming envious. The danger is that if you're not aware of this behavior, you might internalize those comments. You might start questioning whether your progress is valid or if you really deserve the attention and opportunities you're getting. That's exactly what jealousy wants, to plant seeds of doubt. But once you recognize the language, you reclaim your power. You stop taking it personally and start seeing it for what it is: a reflection of someone else's discomfort with your light. Jealousy doesn't always come with a snarl. Sometimes it comes with a smile and a sentence that feels just a little off. Pop. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing the words that come from someone who's secretly envious. Jealousy doesn't speak with wisdom or facts. It speaks from a place of insecurity. And when someone is insecure, especially in comparison to you, their words often have nothing to do with your reality and everything to do with how they feel about themselves. Think about phrases like, "I could have done that too if I wanted." This isn't just a casual comment. It's a defense mechanism. It's the verbal equivalent of crossing their arms and trying to protect their ego. It's not about you or your accomplishments. It's about the uncomfortable truth they feel when they see someone doing what they haven't done, achieving what they haven't attempted, or succeeding where they've hesitated. They need to believe that the only reason you're ahead is because you somehow had an advantage or got lucky, not because you put in more effort, made sacrifices, or dared to try. You'll also hear, "You're not even that good," or "They only like you because you're trendy right now." These statements might sting at first, but if you look deeper, you'll see they're built on insecurity, not substance. If they truly didn't think you were a threat, they wouldn't need to bring you down. But because your progress reminds them of their stagnation, they try to strip your success of meaning. It's like trying to erase your shine with their bitterness. Even phrases like "it's not that serious" or "a why are you trying so hard" are often projections of their fear that you might actually succeed at something they're too afraid to pursue. They minimize your ambition because it highlights their inaction. Your motivation forces them to confront the dreams they've shelved or never dared to chase. So instead of admitting that, they try to convince you, and maybe even themselves, that what you're doing doesn't matter. Jealousy reveals itself in these repeated phrases that try to put you back in a box. But none of these words are rooted in truth. They're rooted in the discomfort of watching someone else rise while feeling stuck or unseen. And sometimes it's easier for people to mock what they don't understand than to support what they can't match. So remember, the next time someone throws out a jealous comment disguised as advice or critique, listen closely, not to believe it, but to understand where it's really coming from. Their words don't define you. They expose them. When someone says it won't last, they're not making a prediction. They're revealing a wish, a silent, unspoken hope that whatever success you've found is temporary, that it's a fluke, that it fades before it fully blooms. Why? Because if it lasts, if you keep winning, if your consistency becomes undeniable, then it forces them to accept a reality they're not ready to face, that it wasn't just luck, it was you, your talent, your vision, your persistence, your evolution. Jealous people don't root for your downfall because they hate you. Many times, they don't even know how to process you. What they hate is what your success reflects back to them. Your wins hold up a mirror. They make them question their own effort, choices and progress, or lack thereof. So rather than clapping for your consistency, they try to convince themselves and others that it's a moment, not a movement. Let's see how long it lasts. That's a classic line, dressed up like skepticism, but really dripping in doubt. Doubt that you're capable. Doubt that you deserve it. I see you. But most of all, doubt that they'll ever reach the place you're headed. Because if it lasts for you, they'll be forced to reckon with the idea that it could have lasted for them too if they had only tried. People who say it won't last are hoping that your momentum runs out so they can feel safe again. Your growth is unsettling to those who are comfortable in stillness. If you outgrow your old self, and especially if you outgrow the version of you they once knew, it disrupts the narrative they've built. Deuces. The narrative that you were just like them, just as limited, just as unsure, just as stuck. Watching you break out of that box threatens the illusion they've clung to. So instead of dealing with their own resistance to change, they try to cast a shadow over your light. It's not about whether you're qualified or sustainable. It's about their need for you to fail so they can feel validated in staying the same. This is why it's important to understand. When someone says, it won't last, don't mistake that for wisdom or insight. They aren't psychic. They aren't analyzing trends or your business plan or your heart. They're reacting emotionally, not logically. They're speaking from fear, not fact. They don't know your future, but you do because you're the one building it. Every late night, every early morning, every uncomfortable risk, every small, quiet victory behind the scenes. The only thing that won't last is their doubt when your results start speaking louder than their opinions. There are few phrases more loaded than someone looking you in the eye and saying, you've changed. It sounds simple, even observational, but when it comes from a jealous person, it's rarely meant as a compliment. It's a subtle accusation, a coded criticism, a quiet way of saying, you're not who you used to be, and that makes me uncomfortable. But here's the truth. Change is not betrayal. It's growth. The people who are most likely to say, you've changed in a negative tone are often the ones who benefited from your smaller self. They liked you when you were unsure, when you played it safe, when your ambition hadn't yet outgrown their approval. Back then, you were relatable, predictable, comfortable for them. But now that you've shifted, maybe in your confidence, your boundaries, your mindset, or your environment, they don't know how to handle it. So instead of adapting with you, they resist by clinging to an outdated version of who you used to be. Let's be real. You're supposed to change. If a year goes by and you're still thinking, acting, and living exactly as you did before, that's not loyalty to your identity. That's stagnation. Growth requires movement, discomfort, and transformation. The people who understand that will grow with you. The ones who don't will try to keep you in the past where they were most comfortable watching you. When they say, you've changed, what they often mean is, you're setting boundaries now and I can't take advantage of you like I used to. You're focused on your goals and I'm no longer your priority. You're elevating and I don't know how to relate to this version of you. And here's the kicker. They might not even be aware they're jealous. Sometimes the words come from a place they can't fully articulate. But their discomfort speaks volumes. They'll try to guilt you for evolving, make you feel like you've turned your back on who you were. But let's be honest, that old version of you served its purpose. It got you this far, but it's not designed to take you further. And that's okay. If you stayed the same just to keep others comfortable, you'd be abandoning the very path that's taking you where you're meant to go. The version of you they miss, that person had to make way for the person you're becoming. So yes, you've changed. You've grown, you've healed, you've stretched. You've dared to want more, to chase better, to unlearn and relearn. And if someone can't celebrate that with you, that's not your problem. That's their limitation. Because in life, you only have two options: evolve or repeat. And you chose evolution. Gossip is rarely innocent. At its core, gossip is a weapon. Subtle, sneaky, and designed to do damage without leaving fingerprints. And jealous people use it with precision. Because when they can't match your energy, your growth, or your success, they'll try to taint how others see you. It starts small. Whispers in rooms you're not in, concerns framed as curiosity, passive remarks masked as a just saying. They say things like, "I heard they're not really like that." Or, "Did you know they only got that opportunity because of so-and-so?" They don't need proof. They just need attention, a raised eyebrow, a little suspicion, a seed of doubt. That's all they're really after. Because in their mind, if they can't stop your progress, maybe they can stain your reputation. This is how jealous people operate. Indirectly, they rarely confront. Instead, they manipulate perception. Why? Because perception is powerful. A lie repeated often enough can start to feel like truth, especially if it's wrapped in familiarity. They rely on gossip because they know that stories, especially negative ones, travel faster than facts. It's not about proving something. It's about suggesting something just shady enough to make others wonder. Gossip becomes a form of sabotage. It's reputation warfare without ever stepping into a ring. And the worst part, it's done behind closed doors in hushed conversations where the target, you, often doesn't even know it's happening until relationships change, support fades, or opportunities start to slip away for reasons no one can clearly explain. What makes this tactic so destructive is its stealth. Unlike open criticism, which can be addressed head-on, gossip leaves no clear trail. It poisons the air around your name. People who once believed in you may start to distance themselves without ever telling you why. That's the goal of the jealous person, not to fight you, but to isolate you. To chip away at the confidence others have in you, piece by piece. And let's be honest, people gossip out of insecurity. When someone feels threatened by your growth, your character, or your influence, and they can't rise to meet it, they look for ways to pull you down. Talking behind your back becomes a way to feel superior without ever actually doing anything to improve their own situation. It's easier to throw dirt than to build themselves up. And if they can convince just one person to believe their twisted version of you, in their mind, they've won. Because they're not chasing truth, they're chasing control. So when you find yourself at the center of a rumor, or when you hear your name being tossed around carelessly, understand this. It says nothing about your worth, but it says everything about their fear. Jealousy doesn't always show its face directly. Sometimes it just talks when you're not in the room. And it does so because your presence is louder than their words could ever be. One of the most common tactics of jealousy is minimizing your success by crediting everything except you. Not your effort, not your discipline, not the late nights, the failures you had to learn from, or the pressure you carried while still showing up. No, jealous people prefer to explain your achievements away using things outside of your control. Why? Because it makes them feel better about their own lack of results. They'll say things like, well, they just got lucky. It's only because they knew someone. They were in the right place at the right time. If I had what they had, I'd be successful too. These statements aren't just casual observations. They're subtle digs, and more importantly, they're coping mechanisms. By blaming your progress on external factors, they get to sidestep the uncomfortable truth that maybe you earned it, that maybe you worked when they rested, that maybe you sacrificed when they delayed. that maybe your results are the consequence of choices they didn't make. It's far easier to say you were handed success than to admit you created it. Jealous people don't want to recognize the internal work that goes into winning, the unseen grind, the inner discipline, the self-doubt you fought through. That level of honesty would require them to reflect on their own behavior, and that's uncomfortable. It's much more convenient to say you had help, that you got lucky, or that someone opened a door for you. But what they're really doing is trying to take control of the narrative. Because if your success is a result of effort, that means their lack of success might be too. And that's a hard pill to swallow. It's easier to convince themselves that the world played favorites than to ask why they haven't moved forward. This behavior shows up especially when your growth happens fast. If you've leveled up in a visible way, whether it's in your career, relationships, finances, or personal development, people who haven't seen your behind-the-scenes grind will assume it just happened, because again, that's easier. People love to see the glow up, but they'll ignore the grind that got you there. And jealous people need to ignore it, because acknowledging it would highlight their own avoidance of effort. They'll ignore the thousands of hours you put in, the self-doubt you pushed through. The moments you almost quit, the rejection, the criticism, the trial and error. They'll strip away your humanity and paint your journey as a stroke of luck, as if success fell into your lap while they sat back and watched. But deep down, their comments say more about them than they do about you. Because when someone consistently attributes your wins to luck, connections, timing, or any reason besides your capability, what they're really saying is, I can't accept that someone just like me actually did the work. And that's what makes jealousy so tricky. It disguises itself as analysis, but it's really insecurity wearing a mask. And your success threatens the story they tell themselves about what's possible. When jealous people feel threatened by your progress and they can't compete with your results, they often resort to something more subtle, but equally damaging: invalidating your emotions. Instead of celebrating your milestones or acknowledging your challenges, they try to make you feel like what you're experiencing isn't real, isn't that deep, or worse, that it doesn't matter at all. They'll say things like, "You're being too sensitive. It's not that serious. Other people have it worse, you know. You should just be happy. What are you complaining about?" On the surface, these statements might sound neutral, maybe even reasonable. But if you listen closely, they all carry the same underlying message. Your feelings aren't valid, and your experiences don't deserve space. It's a way to downplay the emotional reality of what it took for you to get where you are, and a way for them to pretend your journey hasn't been as intense, as painful, or as brave as it actually was. This tactic is especially common when your success starts triggering other people's insecurities. They know they can't argue with your results, so instead, they go after your emotional truth. They try to silence you by making you feel guilty for being tired, overwhelmed, or even proud. If you open up about the struggle behind your progress, they'll shut it down with dismissive comments. Why? Because acknowledging your emotional labor would mean giving credit to how deeply invested you are and how much you've earned where you are. Let's be clear. Invalidating someone's emotions isn't about offering perspective. It's about control. It's a way of saying, stay in line. Don't feel too much. Don't express too much. Don't make your growth look like a big deal. But the truth is, it is a big deal. The wins, the losses, the breakthroughs, the mental battles you fought alone, the strength it took to keep showing up. Your emotions are evidence of the depth of your journey, and jealous people try to erase that depth because it makes them uncomfortable. And here's the kicker. Invalidation is often disguised as care. Someone might say, "I'm just trying to help you not overthink," or "I just don't want you to stress about little things." But the timing and tone of these statements reveal their true intent. They show up when you're vulnerable, when you're opening up, when you're reflecting honestly on your growth. And instead of holding space for that truth, jealous people try to close it up and shut it down. Because if they let you own your emotional story, then they also have to acknowledge your courage. They'd have to admit that success isn't just a result of strategy or timing. It's also emotional endurance. And that's something jealous people rarely want to confront because deep down, they know they haven't done the inner work themselves. So when your emotions are dismissed or minimized, it's not just about the comment in the moment. It's about an attempt to shrink your voice, your narrative, and your power. But every time someone tries to erase what you feel, remember, your emotions don't make you weak. They make your progress real. As you evolve, not everyone around you will celebrate it. In fact, some will grow noticeably uneasy, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your transformation is a reflection of something they're avoiding in themselves. And when you start outgrowing the habits, mindsets, and environments that once made sense for the old version of you, you're going to notice an unsettling truth. Not everyone wants to grow with you. You might hear comments like, "You've changed too much," or "You're so different now." Arvor. Oh, used to be more fun. Oh, why are you acting like you're better than everyone? And while these remarks might seem like observations, they're often subtle expressions of discomfort. Your new mindset, your new boundaries, your new goals, these things challenge the dynamics that used to keep others comfortable. The people who preferred you small, silent, predictable, or dependent may not know how to handle the stronger, more self-assured version of you. But here's the thing. Growth demands space. It's not always loud, but it is powerful. It shifts your energy, your choices, and the way you carry yourself. And the moment you start honoring your own evolution, someone somewhere will feel like you're stepping out of bounds. That's because your progress disrupts the status quo. It forces people to reevaluate the role you played in their life. And maybe most challenging of all, it forces them to confront what they haven't done for themselves. You'll see it when you start setting boundaries they never expected. When you stop entertaining gossip, when you begin talking about your dreams with conviction instead of hesitation, when you choose peace over drama, when you no longer tolerate being someone's emotional dumping ground, that's when the shift happens. That's when they start getting uncomfortable, not because you're doing too much, but because you're finally doing what's right for you. And unfortunately, some people will react by trying to pull you back into the version of yourself that they could control, relate to, or manipulate. And they'll remind you of who you used to be. They'll make you question your path. They'll try to shrink your progress down to something temporary or superficial, just so they don't have to change themselves. But here's what you have to understand. Your growth isn't a betrayal. You're not responsible for managing someone else's discomfort with your progress. You don't owe it to anyone to stay stuck just because they aren't ready to move forward. You are allowed to grow, to heal, to evolve, and to dream on a scale that feels right for you, even if it threatens the comfort zones of people around you. You weren't made to stay the same. You are made to expand, to rise, and to explore the full stretch of your potential. And yes, that process will shift your circle. It will create distance. It will reveal who was truly for you and who was only comfortable with you when you were shrinking to fit inside a box they built for you. But you don't have to fit that box anymore. You don't have to apologize for changing. You don't have to tone yourself down to be more digestible for people who never intended to grow in the first place. Your evolution is not up for debate. And anyone who feels threatened by your growth has the option to evolve or exit. At the end of the day, growth isn't meant to be comfortable for everyone. In fact, it's often the discomfort of others that signals just how far you've come. The jealous comments, the attempts to invalidate your emotions, the gossip, and the dismissive remarks, they're all signs that you're doing something right. You're pushing the boundaries of what's expected, and you're living a life that's true to your potential, not anyone else's limitations. So don't shrink to fit into spaces that weren't made for the person you've become. Don't let the discomfort of others dictate your worth or your progress. Keep evolving, keep growing, and keep striving for the highest version of yourself. Because your success is not a reflection of their inadequacy, it's a testament to your perseverance, your hard work, and your courage. Let them say what they will. In the end, their words won't stop your journey, but your ability to keep moving forward will silence their doubts. Remember, the more you rise, the more you shine, the more jealous eyes will follow. But it's your light that will always outshine the darkness of their insecurity. Continue to grow, continue to thrive, and most importantly, continue to be unapologetically you.